My name is Luke Truan. I'm a film composer for, film, TV, advertising, and looking to get into the gaming side of things, right? Because I think that'd be really awesome to write music for games. And then, in terms of for Nobody Wins, obviously I was the composer for the film, right? And so it was really fun to, create the soundtrack and all the cinematic sound that needed to go with the film to match all the amazing visuals. And so that's what I did for the film. And then for the industry, I mean, I've been working in film for now 11 years. This is my 11th year. And I've been working in another side of the music business called the sync license business for now 4 years. This is my 4th year doing that. And so that's mostly focused on creating music with a concept in mind, and then you work with other companies or sync agents or music supervisors, and then they place it into films, TV, games, advertising. So I've been doing that as well. I mean, I love that pulsing sound. It really captures, what we were going for with that sound. And slowly fading in the strings and the piano. And that's a custom piano sound that I made it, really emotional sounding piano. Yeah, so I guess it started back, I bought my first composer rig, like the computer, we call the computer, the rig. And so that was back in 2012. My wife was, we and I had been talking about it, and she was like, you should just do it. She was really supportive. It was like, yeah, just do it and, start learning. And so I did. I bought it June of 2012. I still remember. And I got it from, Sweetwater, which is awesome. Love those guys. And so I took a year to basically learn really basic stuff, like how to even load an instrument, how to make a session in Pro Tools, how to work with the interface in general, like, digging into all the shortcuts and like what everything is and where things are in the interface. And then I was kind of messing around with like, well, how do you, create music with all these instruments, these thousands of instruments? And so I took a year to kind of get started on that. And then I guess in 2013, I reached out to some SCAD students, and they graciously allowed me to score, some films for 4 years for this one SCAD student. And so that I kind of went through school with him in a way. And so that's kind of how it started. But I mean, if you go back even farther, I've always been in music. I mean, I was going to be a concert pianist when I was in my late teens. That was my goal. So I guess the way that I got started on the film was that you reached out to me and then asked if I'd be interested in looking at a film that you were working on. And I said, yeah, of course. I'm always interested in looking at new films to kind of find out what companies and everybody's working on, and so because I love a good story, regardless of it's a short or a feature or whatever. I mean, it's a good story. It's a good story. Yeah, so that's kind of how I got started. And as soon as I saw the rough cut, I was hooked. I was like, oh yeah, I gotta be involved in this one. This is good stuff. So, yeah, unexpected in a way because it's you kind of expect to hear the badass rock music potentially, but then it doesn't do that.
Right.
And you're like, whoa.
Yeah, well, a large part
The
of it
mood
was
is not changing.
right.
Well, I mean, first, Josh was great to work with. Real simple. It's a really easy answer. And in terms of like communicating musically, we didn't really have a problem. I mean, he came with some reference tracks. He had a really clear vision of what he wanted for, the scene. And so it was then my job to translate, which is what I do, right? That's what composers do. They, story tell through music. And so once I had the reference tracks, I kind of studied the reference tracks and then started to kind of sit with it, watch the film, and then just kind of play around with some ideas based on some of the reference tracks, and then come up with some original content, and then send over some quick short clips to kind of make sure it was on the right track. And Josh was like, yep, we're good to go, keep going. So I kept doing that. And so I think that helped the process by just giving some short clips as we were moving through the scenes to kind of make sure that we're on the same page. So I think that was probably key. I often think about this a lot, right? Because this is kind of what I do, right? And I'm always trying to bring the best emotion I can out of the instruments in the computer. And so, I mean, I feel like I do a really good job at that, bringing, because I understand how the orchestra players play. While I can't play like them, I understand how they play and how to recreate that as best as I can at the computer. It's definitely not as good, or it's not the same as the live players, but you can get, really realistic kind of articulations and dynamics and emotions. I mean, yeah, you can definitely get it really, really high quality in the computer. There's really only like one scene. Is when this I don't know, guy comes through the door. I scored it in a certain way because that's how I viewed it. Based on the actions of this person coming through the door. So I had something already kind of like instantly come to me as soon as I saw it, and it wasn't what Josh wanted for the film, and so we worked together to find out, kind of keep the essence of the score, but then kind of like a little climactic approach in a certain part of that scene with the same style that we had been using with a little bit of variation, instead of like more of the kind of action rock kind of vibe that I was envisioning. Is more like consistent with like the rest of the film that happened prior to that scene. And then I just figured out a way to blend it all in, to the scene that was following it, and kind of keep the pacing. And one thing that I did do is that I tried to match the footsteps as much as I could as the person was coming into, the rooms, and as he was walking through the rooms. And so I thought that was a cool approach. I was like, well, what can I do that's unique, that matches, the score? And so that was one thing that came to me almost instantly. I was like, oh, okay, this beat is kind of like footsteps. And I was like, oh, I'm totally going to see if I can like get close to matching it up, because, obviously you have to stick within the time signature and where the notes are in the measures, and that doesn't always match up with the screen. So sometimes you can be creative with your timing and then make it match the screen. So that was one of the techniques I used. So that was fun. That was fun. So that cello is like, I don't know, haunting might be a good word for it.
It's a great word for it.
And so that's the Tina Guo cello, legato cello.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but it's as simple as, I don't know if you ever were curious about it, but like here's the piano, for example. It's just one of the grand pianos, and you just click on the instrument on the track, and you can get to the instrument. See?
Mm-hmm.
Like that. It's that easy. That was fun.
What advice would you give first-time directors or producers, people that are looking to collaborate with somebody like yourself?
Yeah.
What advice would you give them when they come to you with a project?
I would say have visuals ready. Be in post-production would be a great starting point. You can call a composer in during, like the scripting phase, like the whole script is done, you haven't shot anything. Yeah, you can do that. I mean, I get called into films at that point, and that's fine. You just have to work with the composer to let them know where you are in the production process, because that's very helpful. And then that kind of sets their expectations up for, how to approach the music. And maybe not come up with like concrete ideas, but maybe more like motifs and some soft ideas that can be adjusted later as the visuals come in, because the timing is so important once the visuals are there. And then another thing that's great is to be really close to picture lock. So there's not a lot of changing, especially if you hand over like a rough cut, like obviously that I got, it was ready. Like there wasn't a lot of timing changes. And so that was obviously helped speed up the whole process. Because if you do have to make a lot of changes, it takes more time for the composer to go back through and then change all the music to match the new cuts, right? And that can be a huge job, depending on how many cuts there are. Another thing that's great for new directors or directors who are maybe you've done it for just a little bit, but they're kind of still new to the process, is that have your budget ready. Understand that music does cost. Obviously that's a great expectation for everyone. And even do research. Talk to people find out what other composers are charging, what other directors have paid for music, and also look at licensing music. Maybe that's an option. Because sometimes there's some different costs for licensing that may be more in the budget for the film. Maybe not. Some of the licenses are pretty expensive depending on what you want. And then I would also say for new directors is that be ready to call a composer if you don't find what you want in a library, because that's really the best way to get the custom sound for your film, is to work with a composer that can totally custom craft a soundtrack. And you can't do that as well, with a library, obviously. So those are just some things to kind of like expect when working together. But the leitmotif is like, the characters have their own, theme, basically, right? And so that was super fun to do that, and I thought that was great that you knew about that, because I like to do that all the time anyway.
It's impressive that you were able to make that translate so well with such a short amount of time.
I appreciate it.
Like within like runtime, even like within 9 minutes, that's not easy to establish a theme.
I would say that you don't need a lot of gear to start, especially now. It's a lot just changed even since 2012. I didn't have a lot then, but I probably had more than I would need now starting out, because the laptops are so powerful. You can get virtual instruments, pretty affordably with some of the East-West Composer Cloud stuff. You get access to everything for a low monthly fee, right? So that's a great way to start. And then if you don't have that budget, but you have money for the laptop, get the most powerful laptop or desktop computer you can get. Lots of RAM, strong processor. You want a graphics card to take that load off the system. SSDs, get super fast hard drives. Even if it's a laptop, get all that stuff. And then there's a lot of free instruments that you can get. Actually created a small ebook, which is basically over 1,600 different free virtual instrument sound packs, stuff like that, sample packs, stuff like that you can find, plugins. It also has plugins in there, which is basically my personal guide, my list of stuff that I've collected over the years. And so you can get free instruments and then start your composition experience there. And then once you have the gear, it's best to really find a coaching program like with ThinkSpace, for example, because that's what I did. I actually studied with ThinkSpace. After a little bit of time going on my own, I realized that I needed really some real training and some direction. And so I found out that they had a music for the media package at that time that came with an industry professional that would review all your work. And so you take those notes and you go back and you correct, what they suggested to kind of learn more about the composition process. But I liked it because they give you real world, composition experience. Like it's actual projects that they've already been through, like they've done. And so they know exactly what the client wanted, what the results were, and how to do the scoring for the project. And so training is super, super important. And then it never stops. You just have the mindset as a new composer that you're going to learn stuff whether you're in school or not. And then if you do go to school, like say you go to Berkeley, right? You're going to want to study through school and then continue after school, and you're going to study when you're outside of school. You're going to be studying kind of all the time, but try to come up with a structured way to do it, because you can study a lot of things but never advance. So you have to compartmentalize, when am I going to study this time period? Is it going to be articulations, or is it going to be how to play a cello in the computer, how to make it sound real, because that's one of the things that I learned really early on, is that you can learn all this stuff, but then how do you apply it, right? And so for new composers, I would say practice a lot, especially within the computer, music creation. All right, so this is what it looks like when I'm working with the film. See all the yellow lines? Those are an event that happened, in the film. That's how I know where something's happening. For example, like I'll say, the theme starts is the very beginning of the film. And I also will do like bar markers, like, okay, it's 4 bars in, it's 8 bars in, here's the title card, right? So it jumps right to the title card. And then I also put like where I want a hit to be for something, or let's see, where the title card ends, right? Like I also write trailer music, right? And so I'm constantly learning how to be innovative and creative with current instruments and new instruments for trailer music, right? And so one of the newest, I guess, virtual instruments that I just got was the Tommy Prophet percussion, which is amazing. They did a phenomenal job. It's by Cinematic Tools with Tommy Prophet. They kind of did a collaboration and released this virtual instrument. And so now I'm learning this new tool, which is an instrument. And so since I had a good background in trailers already, obviously that learning is accelerated as I can focus on not the writing aspect so much, but dig in more of the technical side of the new virtual instrument a little deeper. And so that's one of the new things I'm learning. And then, I'm always learning other things like sound design as well, like soundscapes, because, like when you're writing music, you don't really do so much sound design. It's more like a soundscape, right? You're kind of like creating some type of musical, like fantasy world that the ears are listening to. Your imagination can kind of run off with whatever you're hearing, and it's like sound effects meets music. And so like one of the other ones I'm still learning is by Dark Force Audio called Submersive. And that is in the score of, Nobody Wins. And so that was really fun to really dig into that virtual instrument and kind of like figure out how I can use this really cool, tool for the score. And it has a lot of the soundscape kind of elements to it, and it worked perfectly for what, Josh and I had talked about. And so I think the results kind of speak for themselves with the score. So I'm very excited about that. So yeah, learning all the time, learning a lot. So it's the D and the F as part of the D minor. So it actually goes like this. That's what it is. Isolate it just with one. Yeah, so that's what that is. And you have to time it perfectly, obviously, with the title card that comes in. One thing would be the pianos, obviously the controllers. That's something that you have to have. You could use another instrument. Technically, you could use a guitar as a MIDI input device, but it's more difficult to control dynamics at that point because there's no mod wheel on it, right? Maybe you could use a keytar that has a mod wheel on it, but it's more like a guitar with the keyboard, and you play it, like that, right? And so I find it just, the basic pianos with some controllers on it, stuff like that. Those are essential for a composer, and they make mini ones too. You can travel with. So, let's say you're a new composer and you have like a laptop and you have like a mobile kind of rig because you don't have like one spot you can be. You can get like a little controller, right? And there's a bunch, of videos about that out there on social media. But so those are some things that you can't live without. And then virtual instruments, you definitely got to have those. Even if you can play all the instruments in the world, it takes a lot of time and more gear to really set those up and record. So I think I've run the numbers a little bit, and I found it more cost effective to invest in the virtual instruments, and then when you can, add a live instrument or a singer or some live element to the virtual instruments to kind of bring out the character and the texture. Because it's amazing what one live instrument can do with the virtual instrument. It like totally changes the whole dynamics and characters and textures and stuff like that. So those are some things that I couldn't work without them.
All right, I gotta ask you, what's your headphone?
So these are Baradynamic, right? DT 770 Pros, 250 ohm. and I use them for referencing, for mixing, basically. They are a closed back, they're not the open back. I didn't like the sound of the open back because I lost, I don't know, like depth and textures and stuff like that. I couldn't hear it as well. And so I decided to go with these. And the reason why, that's some of the reasons why I like it, but also I can wear these for like a long time and not get like head fatigue, like the band fatigue or the ear fatigue. They're super comfy, where you would typically, hear some type of like fast and furious, type of, rock, music or whatever. And then it even subtracts, actually. I forgot about that. Yeah, it's less climactic when that person comes through the door. I appreciate it, and it's always great to work with you guys, and I appreciate it, and the film rocks, by the way.
Yeah.
I can't say it enough.
I can't
So.
wait for everybody to hear your score.
Oh, I can't wait everybody to see the visuals and the story.